The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Hello, my friends. Hello. Welcome to The Best in the World with Richard Parr. Yes, weird Neil Diamond reference there. I have no idea why I did it. But that's because I'm excited to speak to you, because this week we are once again learning from the very best. That's what we do. That's what we do on The Best in the World with Richard Parr. Each week I speak to a world champion, an Olympic champion, a world number one, or a world record holder. And we get into the nitty-gritty, finding out what these champions do to be the very best. We want to know what is the difference between winning silver and winning gold. We want to know what's the difference between crossing the line first and crossing the line second. We find that out on this podcast. And this week we are learning from the world of snooker. Yes, Graeme Dott won the 2006 World Snooker Championship, beating Peter Ebdon in what a lot of people call one of the slowest matches ever. And on this week's podcast, Graeme admits that he feels that he's never really given the recognition for winning that final, for becoming a champion, because that match is remembered for how long it took. So that's brought up on this week's podcast. Graeme does talk about the good side of becoming a champion when he got to parade that trophy in front of his home football fans. He's a big supporter of the Glasgow Rangers football team, and they play at Ibrox, and he got to present the trophy in front of those fans. He said that was incredible. But then we also heard a lot of low moments with Graeme. After he became world champion, he was suffering from depression, and he talks in quite a lot of detail on this week's podcast about his deal with depression. And then he talks about his resurgence being back in the final in 2010, where he lost to Neil Robertson. And he also talks about his 2004 final, where he lost to Ronnie O'Sullivan. We talk about that and much, much more on this week's podcast, including the mental exhaustion involved in the sport. And he also talks about how he broke his wrist playing football in China with other snooker players. Yes, if you're a professional snooker player, don't go in goal. It can end up in tears. Not saying Graeme cried, but you know what I mean. Before we get to the interview with Graeme, I want to tell you about 99 Designs. 99 Designs is a design website where if you need something designing, it could be a business card, it could be a poster, it could be a website. You can go to 99 Designs, and what they do is they offer your idea to talented freelancers around the world who try and produce the best design based on your specifications. And then if you are happy with what they're starting to produce, you can work with these designers to make iterations so you can get a product that you are 100% happy with. If you're not happy with what is being produced, you can always get your money back. They've got all the terms and conditions on their website. If you want to check out their service, just go to sportacino.com/99 designs. If you go through our link, sportacino.com/99 designs, and you do end up being happy with their service and using their service, then we will be getting a proportion of that fee, just to be transparent with everyone. But it is a product that I personally use, so I do highly recommend it. All right, do you know what else I recommend? I recommend that we now listen from the very best. We listen to the world snooker champion. It's Graeme Dott.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Graeme Dott, welcome to The Best in the World with Richard Parr, 2006 World Snooker Champion. So great to have you on the programme. Let's start at the beginning. Why don't you tell us how you first got interested in snooker, please?
It was really a Christmas present I got from my mum and dad. They got me a small 6-foot table when I was about 8-year-old, and I kind of just started from there and kind of took it up quite quickly.
Oh, fantastic. And were you playing against friends, family, or were you mainly just practicing by yourself?
Oh, it was mainly just kind of playing with your family and my brothers and my dad, and but I just seemed to find it easier than they did. and then I would play some of my friends and that as well. But I just found it kind of quite easy to start with.
And then, of course, that is a smaller table, and then, of course, the actual real snooker tables are a lot bigger. So did you find it quite easy to go from the smaller table to the larger table?
Yeah, obviously it's a big difference from going from a 6-foot table to a 12-foot table. It kind of looks like a football pitch in comparison to the small table. But I can remember my granddad and my uncle used to play snooker every Saturday, and I would go up and watch them. And one of the days they let me have a shot, and I can always remember my uncle telling me after it that he kind of looked at my granddad and he couldn't actually believe that I was potting so many balls. So I think that the very first time I played, I hit like a 20 break. But obviously, first time on a big table, it was kind of quite good at that stage.
Yeah, I remember when I first played, I found it very frustrating, and obviously I didn't have the same level of ability nor the patience that you did. When you were at that age, were there any particular drills that you would do to help improve in those early stages?
Not really, no. I think just the more you play. I can always remember watching the World Championships on like a little portable black and white TV I had in my room while I would be playing on the 6-foot table, and just imagining if I ever got there what it would be like, but never thinking for a minute that I would ever be good enough to get there. But I can just remember not playing any specific routines, but just playing all the time. I just was playing constantly.
Who were some of the players you looked up to back then?
Probably Jimmy White, I would think. I always liked the way Jimmy White played, and it was always a shame that he never actually managed to win the world, but I would have said he was probably... I never exactly had a hero, really. I know a lot of people always say they did, but I never had a hero, but I always liked Jimmy White and hoped he won. And then when Stephen Hendry came along being Scottish, that made a difference as well.
And you said there when you were watching that you never thought that could be you. Was there a moment when you were younger, like, for example, a big tournament victory or something like that, where your mindset started to change, where you did believe that you could be in the same caliber of some of these top players, such as Jimmy White and Stephen Hendry?
Yeah, I think when I won a lot of tournaments as in Scotland as being just an amateur, and I was winning a lot of amateur tournaments. And then you play in kind of like British tournaments and things like that. And I remember going to play in the British under-19s, and I was going there as a 14-year-old, or I think I'd just turned 15. And there was an actual an under-15 tournament there at the same time, and I was trying to enter that. And the way my birthday fell, I couldn't actually get in it. I was too old by about a day or something. And I had to play in the under-19s. So I was obviously playing in that expecting I've got no chance of winning it, but I'll go in it anyway since I'm here. And I actually won it. And I think when I won that, I thought, I think I'm actually kind of quite good at this. I might have a chance of trying to do it for a living.
And of course you did, and you did it to great success. Now, obviously, you won in 2006. You won the world title, but of course you were in the final in 2004 as well. Just tell us about that whole experience there, and obviously your feelings after that final. I
was obviously no matter what anybody says, you're still disappointed when you lose. You can't. I know in the cold light of day, you look back at it and you think, well, I've done well to get to the final, but you've still got that you're still devastated that you lost. But also, to be in the final of the World Championships was unbelievable. I mean, it was actually quite emotional getting introduced for the final, because you remember things like watching it back when you've got a black and white portable and you were playing on a 6-foot table, and then normally every year you're watching the final, and then I was actually in it. It was quite surreal, and obviously Ronnie O'Sullivan played unbelievable that year. It's probably the best I think he's ever played. 2004, he just played like a machine. So there was no shame in losing to Ronnie, but you were still a little bit disappointed that you lost.
Are you someone who gets quite emotional in other matches at all?
No, very rarely. I would probably say I'm quite emotionally dead in comparison to a lot of people. but I just felt quite emotional at that particular time.
Did you do anything to try and control it, or you just kind of went with the moment?
No, I think once I got out and I got introduced and I was there, and once the game started, I was fine. I'm sure it must be the same for football players when they're in the tunnel and they're nervous, and then once they get out and the whistle blows, they'll be okay. And I think that was the same with me. Once I got there, I was fine. I can always remember in the final, I just felt I'd ran completely out of steam. Just the World Championships is so hard and so long that it's different from other tournaments.
Following that defeat, following coming runner-up in that final, did you look back and reflect on it, and were there any particular things that you felt you learned that you were able to help when you did get to your next final in 2006?
Yeah, I think with the World Championships especially, it's a psychological thing. I think that the good thing with Snooker with the World Championships is it tests every part of your game. You can't possibly flip your way to being world champion. It's just impossible. The format's too long. There's too many things can go wrong. And I think it was good to learn to control your emotions when you were playing there, because there's so many different psychological things can happen. You've got to sleep on a lead. You don't normally get that in any other match at snooker. You've got to go to bed that night and you're 9-7 down when you think you really should be 10-6 in front and that kind of thing. And I've always been quite good at dealing with things like that.
Yeah, one of the things I've heard about tennis players is they almost automatically forget about the last point, and they're always looking to the next point. Like the next point is the most important, and it doesn't matter what happened before. Is that something similar that works for snooker players?
Yeah, I think it does, and I think that, as I said, the World Championships, because it's so long, the first round is first to 10, that's where the majority of all our tournaments are first to 4 or first to 5, so it's double right away just for the first round. And then you're first to 13, first to 17, and first to 18 for the final, and it's very, very long. And you need to have that sort of attitude, because you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're only human. You're going to miss, and you're going to play some bad shots, and you're also going to play some bad sessions at the World. But the big thing is to try and limit the damage that you do. So if you had a really bad session, but you only lose it 5-3, a lot of players might lose that session 7-1 or 6-2, and I think that's the difference.
It must be really difficult sometimes, though, to concentrate. Like we'll talk more about the 2006 final in a moment, but that was at the time the longest ever final. I've also seen you played one match against Peter Ebdon, which lasted 7 hours and 18 minutes in a first round match in a World Championship. Mm-hmm. These are epic encounters. How do you stay focused?
Well, it's very hard. I mean, I think what you're saying there, both those matches involved Peter Ebdon. And I actually got on quite well with Peter Ebdon. I think he's a really, really nice guy, but he's incredibly slow and hard to play against. And it can just be very, very frustrating, and it's very, very hard to concentrate. But at the end of the day, you've got to do it. There's not really much you can do. It's you either bite the bullet and try and concentrate, or you end up giving up and losing the match.
Mm-hmm. You must be absolutely mentally exhausted afterwards.
Oh yeah, you go back, and as I said, especially the World Championships, you get exhausted from about the quarterfinals, because every time you go out and play, you're concentrating for 3-4 hours, and it's not physically hard to play snooker, but mentally it's ridiculously hard. And there's times you think, I just can't get back out and do this again. I don't know how I'm going to get back out tomorrow morning and play, but you end up, you just do it. You just manage to get through on adrenaline.
Do you do much exercise other than snooker?
Not really, no. I did play golf. I've not played now for about maybe 2 years because the calendar's that busy with the snooker. I don't really get that much chance to play golf, and the weather's never that great in Scotland either. So even when you did have the chance to play, the weather wasn't great, or you've got the kids, and so I've not played for a while, but I did play golf to a decent standard.
But I did see, or I did read, that you missed a few tournaments a few years ago because you got an injury playing football. Is that true?
Yeah. I was actually at a tournament. We were playing in China, and there happened to be a football pitch at the side of our hotel, and some of the snooker boys thought we'll get into the football. So I mean, it wasn't even anything. It was just a freak accident. There was no like hard tackles or anything. I just happened to be, I was getting more and more tired, and I thought I'll go in goals. And somebody took a shot, and I stuck my hand out to save it, and saved it, and broke my wrist, which was a bit of a disaster.
Yeah, my brother's a magician.
My football career's finished as well.
Yeah, my brother's a magician, and he never wants to go in goal because he thinks, if I make one save, that's my career down the drain.
Well, that's exactly what I've done, so I don't do anything now anymore. I was lucky if you get me playing 10-pin bowling. I'm scared to do anything now.
I bet. Who else was playing in this game? Who took the shot, in fact?
Memory serves me right. The one that took the shot was Tom Ford. And I think Mark Selby was playing, Mark Williams, Jamie Cope. There was a few other ones as well. I can't remember exactly who was all playing, but I know Tom Ford took the shot. And I remember saying to Mark Selby, I think I've really hurt my wrist. But I never actually looked at it. And then I happened to look and I went, oh my God, I said, it's definitely broke. It was all twisted and that was horrible.
Clearly a football fan. You're also a Rangers fan. And again, we're going to talk about 2006 next, but you had the opportunity to present the trophy in front of the Ibrox fans. How was that?
Yeah. Oh, it was amazing. It really was amazing. I mean, it's, again, I can remember being in the tunnel and I was getting introduced to come out and I thought, I wonder what they'll be like. Because I just thought, I've always been a Rangers fan and I've never hid the fact that I was a Rangers fan. But you just sometimes don't know. I thought, I don't want to go out and nobody claps. But it was amazing. It really was amazing. I went out and they were all singing my name and it was brilliant. Really, really great day. In fact, to be honest, I probably enjoyed that better than actually winning the World. It was really good.
Yeah, when you did win the World Championships, what was going through your mind at the time?
I made the schoolboy error when I played Peter Ebdon of actually thinking that I'd won, which was pretty stupid, really. When I think back on it now, but I had won the 3 sessions that we'd played. So I've built up a lead of 15-7. And first 18, I mean, it's a pretty big lead. And I was playing better than Peter for the 3 sessions. And I just thought, well, that's it, I've won now. And I can remember actually in the dressing room, I actually fell asleep. I went to sleep in the dressing room. And I slept for about an hour and a half before I went out that night. I must have completely and utterly just switched off and thought, I've done it, that's me won. And I went out for the final session and just felt completely relaxed and then just couldn't put anything. I was just terrible. It was horrible. It is the worst feeling I think I've ever had, ever. It was just a horrible feeling because it was as if I'd forgot how to play the game. And then he started playing well and slowly was dragging it back and it was just horrible. Obviously, eventually I kind of fell over the line, but it kind of took the gloss off it for me, as well as how long the game was taking, because he was obviously taking forever to play all shots, and I felt I got some bad press after it, as if it was me that was making the game slow when it had nothing to do with me. It was Peter was playing so slow, but I kind of got tagged with it as well.
Have you slept during a match ever since?
Not in between, no, absolutely no chance. Not in between sessions. Because I won the 3rd session and we maybe finished at, we'll say we finished at 5 o'clock and I was due again to play at 7 o'clock. So I quickly got something to eat and then I was in the dressing room and I just flaked out and slept till about 6:30. I've never ever done it before. I can't imagine I would do it again. You'd imagine you would be that nervous, but I just thought I'd won. I'll never do that again.
Are you someone who gets nervous much?
I think everybody gets nervous. I think when you're not nervous, you do what I just said there. I think that's what happens when you're not nervous, because I walked out there and felt fantastic, felt nice and relaxed, and that's when you don't play your best. I think you play your best when you're nervous and you're probably a little bit scared and intimidated. I think that's when you play your best.
Are you someone with a regular pre-match routine? Are you someone who might have some superstitions or something like that before a big match?
I used to have things like that years ago when I was kind of first starting, but I would probably say the only kind of superstition I have now is not to be superstitious. I just don't. I just try, even if I start to think. Say you think silly things like I'll need to wear that shirt because I played with it. I don't like it. As soon as I think of that, I deliberately wear the opposite shirt. I just don't want to get involved in, because I think it can get really bizarre. Some of the things people do.
So your superstition is to do the opposite of superstitions. I like it.
Yeah, basically.
On this podcast, I speak to many different sports stars and athletes and everything like that. And one of the big things is nutrition. Is nutrition important for a snooker player? And if so, what is your typical diet like?
I would say, personally, I would say no. I don't really think it makes a great deal of difference. But that's because I'm pretty lazy and eat whatever I want. I've always been lucky in the extent that I don't really put that much weight on, although I'm starting to put weight on now, so my waistcoat's getting a bit bigger. But I know there's people like Neil Robertson who's turned vegan, Peter Ebden's vegan, and if they think that works for them, well, good luck. There's nothing wrong. But I've made 3 finals at the World Championships, and my diet's terrible, so I don't really think it makes a great deal of difference. As I said, you don't need to be. It's not a physical sport. It's not as if we're running. Mentally, you need to be pretty fit, I would think. So you can do some work mentally, but I don't think physically it makes a great deal of difference.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
We'll be back with Graeme in just a moment, but if you like what you're listening to, then maybe like our Facebook page. Just see what I did there. Just go to facebook.com/Best in the World with Richard Parr, so you'll always be updated on what we're up to on the programme. You'll see the latest episode, maybe a few pictures. You'll also be able to find out potentially who I've got lined up. I like to give a few clues on who I'm about to interview, and sometimes I like to give you the opportunity to ask questions yourself to future guests. We're also on Twitter. Well, I am personally at Richard_Parr, plus Sportacino, which looks after this podcast. You can also follow Sportacino at Sportacino, SPORTUCCINO. So that's all the social media, but let's return to the conversation with the world snooker champion, Graeme Dott.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
What's a typical training day like for you, Graeme?
It's probably not as much as a lot of players would be. A typical training day for me is maybe just go into the snooker room about 10 o'clock and I'll practice away until about maybe 12:30, 1 o'clock, get some lunch and back in again, and I'll finish about 4 o'clock. And so that's basically it. I know there's lots of players that practice a lot more, but there's also a lot of players that practice a lot less. I think it's just finding what's right. I think that the problem that I think a lot of amateurs do is they just pound the practice table and they want to play 10 hours a day, but they end up, after 3 or 4 hours, you end up practicing stuff you shouldn't really practice, and they muck about with their technique and things like that. I think if you do 3 to 4 hours of good proper practice, I think that's enough, personally, for me anyways.
Is that for you because you've now reached that high level? You've become a world champion. You can do 147 breaks and things like that. That for you, it's more just staying sharp.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think the way the snooker calendar is now, we're playing tournaments all the time, basically, and there's not really as much time to practice as were before. You would play a match, and if you lost, you might not have another tournament for 2 months, so you would be practicing to try and fill that time. But now you lose, there's a tournament the next week, so you're only keeping your arm going. You're only practicing to keep yourself going, unless there's something, you think there's something actually wrong, like mechanically with your cue action, and you need to go and practice. There's not really that much need, I don't think, to do it as much.
In the last 10 years, there's become a lot more international tournaments. Is that something you enjoy?
Probably not. I've been one of the ones that's kind of been. It's great for the game. I'm just purely talking personal. I've obviously got two kids, and it's hard. It's hard when you're travelling all the time. So personally, for me, I sometimes don't enter all the tournaments as well because it obviously affects my ranking. But I've got to try and juggle it between personal time and time with the kids, and also earning the money.
There's been quite a few changes over the last few years since Barry Hearn's taken over. What have you thought about some of the changes, and are there any other changes you'd like to see to the sport of snooker?
Well, he's changed it kind of dramatically now, where it's sort of we all start like Wimbledon. We all start in the 1-2-8 from the same round as well. In previous years, if you were ranked in the top 16, you would be seeded through to like the TV stages of tournaments, and I preferred it that way personally. I think the game as it is just now is too hard for young players coming through because they're playing like Ronnie O'Sullivan first round. As with the way it was when I first started, I was playing somebody roughly of my own standard, and then the second round they would gradually get better, third round, fourth round, fifth round, then you would hit maybe Ronnie O'Sullivan. And I just think some of these boys, it's a very expensive game. If you're travelling, you want to enter all the tournaments, and you're travelling all over the world. And if you lose in the first round, you don't get any money. So I think it's very hard for the young boys coming through to make a living at the game.
All right, let's go back to just looking at your career, and we'll talk about the 2010 final as well. But the few years after you won in 2006, Graeme, were very difficult for you, weren't they? You were suffering from depression. That must have been such a difficult time. Could you even think about snooker at that time?
No, it was I never actually even knew I had depression at the time. I knew there was something wrong with us, but at the time I was just ignorant to it. I never realised exactly what it was because my father-in-law had died. He was my manager, and if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be playing snooker. He backed me from when I was a kid, and he would obviously be at all the tournaments with me. And obviously when I won the world, it was nice that he was actually there, but he was in the latter stages of his cancer. And I found it wasn't actually long after I won the world that he passed away. And I just never dealt with it very well. And I just wasn't. I mean, I was showing up to tournaments, but I wasn't playing. I mean, it was just I had lost. I don't even know how many matches in a row I had lost. I was just showing up to tournaments, beat, home, depressed, got to the next tournament, beat, home, depressed. I mean, it was just horrible. It was a horrible time to be in, and obviously my wife told me I need to go to the doctors, and she said, I think you're depressed, but I never realised I was as bad as what actually was.
Once you were at the doctors, how long do you think it took you to end the depression?
Well, I mean, I think the thing is that nowadays with depression, it's not as bad as it was kind of 20 years ago. I think people are more open to telling me they've actually got it now. And I think that the big thing for me was actually going to the doctors, and the doctor speaking to him, and the doctor actually saying, look, if everything that you're saying, that's depression. And you instantly even just feel a bit, I'm not saying you feel better, but you think, well, at least I know there's something wrong with me. Because, I mean, if you were sitting, I could just be sitting staring at a TV that wouldn't even be on for 3-4 hours, and that was terrible. And to actually be told you've got something wrong with you, and then obviously you go on some medication, and I'm on medication just now. I'll probably always just be on it. But I'm happy now. Everything's okay. It's under control. But it's something I've always going to need to watch for probably the rest of my life.
No, well, thank you for sharing that, Graeme. And of course, 2010, 4 years after becoming champion, you did reach the final again against Neil Robertson. With everything which had happened in those years between, did it feel very different being in that final?
Yeah, that personally for me, that was better. 2010, I've got better memories of that than I have of 2006. for probably a couple of reasons. One, I played really well. I played really, really well in 2010. Every match that I played great. And I was now getting the press that I thought I deserved. As in 2006, I never really get any credit for winning the world. It just, all they wanted to talk about was how slow the game was, and it was just, I never really got good press for it. And also in 2010, it was great to know that I could still do it after obviously the years of depression and coming back, and it was nice to do it again. And I just ran out of steam, or I think I probably could have beaten Neil personally. I just completely ran out of steam at the end.
You mentioned Stephen Hendry earlier, and please correct me if I'm wrong or where I got this information was incorrect, but according to what I said, it says that you never managed to beat Stephen Hendry. Is that true?
Well, it isn't. I didn't beat him. I did actually beat him, but it was like 2 years before he retired. I mean, obviously he's still very good. And it was in a small tournament. It wasn't exactly a really big tournament. And I managed to win. I think I won 4-0, but that was the first time I'd ever beat him. I think we played about 9 times and he'd beat me 9 times.
With that,
a lot of them 5-4s, right enough, but still.
With that in mind, does it sometimes become like a mental thing where, when you face someone who you haven't been able to beat, that you kind of think, oh, I can't beat this guy? Was that part of it at all? Or is it just because he's Stephen Hendry and he's an amazing player?
Yeah, I think it's probably the second part, because I never ever went into the match thinking... I think that sometimes you just get a bogey player. I think you can get that in a lot of sports. Well, I can remember actually talking about the same guy, Stephen Hendry. He lost 3 times to Mark Johnson Allen. They only played 3 times and Mark Johnson Allen beat him. Now, I don't even know if you know Mark Johnson Allen, but I just think you just get bogey players. And I think no matter, whenever I played Stephen Hendry, he played unbelievably well. It never seemed to matter. I could watch him the round before and he would be terrible. And then he would play me and he would play unbelievable. And it just happened to be, it just happened to be like that, where he always seemed to play well against me.
Yeah, it might be up for it against you more than he was against other players as well.
I have no idea.
Yeah, we're going to wrap this up, Graeme. But obviously you're 40 years old now. Been playing this for many years. How much longer do you think you've got in playing competitively in the sport of snooker?
I think I've probably still. I think I've got another. I would say I've probably got another good 4-5 years where I could still do some damage at the game. Then after that, I'll still play, but I might not be as good as kind of. I might be on the slide, but I think with snooker, there's no reason why you can't play at 45, 46 as long as your health's okay. I don't think, as I said before, it's not a physical game, and my eyesight's okay, touch wood, so there's not really any reason why you can't. I mean, as long as you're still dedicated enough. I'm working with a new coach just now as well, so I'm still trying.
One of the other things we talk on this podcast a lot is goal setting. Obviously, the main goal for every snooker player is to become the world champion. Is that always your goal every year when playing, or do you set other things that you want to achieve?
I think to be honest, snooker's actually getting that difficult now. That you're actually just, your goals to win any tournament throughout the year would be a decent season, because it's so hard for any one player to dominate the game, because there's so many players now. It's getting a bit like golf, where every week you could have a different winner. So I think just to win a tournament at the start of the year would be a kind of a normal, realistic and decent goal.
Well, Graeme, it's been so good to talk to you. Thank you for all of this amazing insight on this week's Best in the World. Just before you go, can we find you on social media or on a website? And if so, can you let us know where that is, please?
I think the only thing I was on was Facebook. I think just my name and Facebook, just Graeme Dott. You'll find me on that.
Well, we'll put a link to that on the description page of this podcast. Graeme Dott, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and thank you for being the best in the world.
No problem. Thank you.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Great stuff there from Graeme. Really appreciated his honesty and his openness about everything that has happened to him throughout his career. Really appreciate his time on this week's Best in the World with Richard Parr. You may have noticed in the conversation we did mention Stephen Hendry, and Stephen Hendry's already been on the Best in the World with Richard Parr, the multi-time world snooker champion. You can go back and listen to that episode at acast.com/best. Also on sportacino.com. All of the episodes are there, including another one with a snooker champion. Yes, we don't just leave it at 2. We've got 3 of them so far. We spoke to Sean Murphy. He's been on the podcast, and you can also find that on iTunes, where I'm hoping that you're already subscribed. If you're not, please press the subscribe button, and please give us a rating and review. It only takes a minute or so, and it matters a lot to our podcast. Hopefully we'll have a few more snooker players in the forthcoming weeks where we can learn from the very, very best. Alright, that's been it for this week's Best in the World with Richard Parr. If you like what you listen to and you want to support our show, you can do that by going to patreon.com/best in the world. We produce this with a free budget. We've been doing it for over 2 years, but you've been able to give back to us by going and becoming a patron at patreon.com/best in the world. Thanks to those of you who've done it already, and if you'd like to support our show, please go to that website. Alright, that's it for this week. I'll be back with you next week with another world champion, Olympic champion, world record holder, or world number 1 as we continue to learn from the best in the world. Goodbye.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.